When I first saw the old asylum, I was less than thrilled about the prospect of converting it into a hotel. The crumbling brick facade, narrow, shadowy corridors, and deafening silence reeked of nightmares and the macabre. But hey, a job's a job, and I wasn't about to turn down the fat paycheck that came with this particular gig. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to take on the project, figuring I'd just keep my head down, do the work, collect my cash, and get out of there as fast as possible. Little did I know the horrors that awaited me within those haunted halls. It all started innocently enough. My crew and I got to work immediately, gutting the place, knocking down walls, and generally transforming the former asylum into a cozy boutique hotel. The owners wanted to maintain some of the building's original character, so we did our best to preserve specific architectural details while still making the space feel modern and inviting. As I painted the freshly primed walls, I couldn't help but feel a slight chill run down my spine. The place had an eerie energy, an unsettling vibe that seemed to seep into my bones, but I dismissed it, thinking it was just my overactive imagination playing tricks on me. The first few weeks went by without incident. My crew and I worked tirelessly, putting in long hours to prepare the hotel for its grand opening. The end result was actually quite impressive. The old asylum had been transformed into a charming little inn with plush furnishings, modern amenities, and a touch of vintage flair. I'll admit, I was starting to feel proud of what we'd accomplished. This place might be all right, after all. The spirits of the past would simply leave us be, allowing the hotel to operate in peace. Boy, I was wrong. The strange occurrences began about a month after the hotel opened its doors. At first, they were just little things, odd noises in the night, lights flickering for no apparent reason, and the occasional chill in the air. Harmless enough, I suppose, but they still had my crew and me on edge. Then it started to escalate. Objects would go missing, only to turn up in bizarre locations. Doors would slam shut on their own, and on more than one occasion, we'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures lurking in the hallways, vanishing before we could get a good look. The guests began to take notice, too. Complaints started rolling in. Guests reported restless nights, unsettling dreams, and a general sense of unease throughout their stay. Some even checked out early, citing the haunted nature of the hotel as the reason for their premature departure. As the owner's representative on site, I did my best to address the concerns and appease the guests. I chalked up the strange occurrences to natural phenomena, faulty wiring, drafty windows, overactive imaginations, but deep down, I knew the truth. This place was haunted, and the spirits that dwelled within were growing more and more restless by the day. Things came to a head one particularly chilling night. I was working late, finishing a decorative mural in one of the hotel's common areas, when I heard a horrific scream echo through the halls. Dropping my brushes, I raced towards the sound, my heart pounding. I found one of the maids huddled in a corner, trembling with terror. "What happened?" I demanded, grabbing her by the shoulders. "What's wrong?" "The body," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the basement." Without another word, I dashed towards the basement stairwell, my footsteps thundering against the polished hardwood floors. I flung open the door and descended the steps, my eyes frantically scanning the darkness for any sign of the alleged corpse. And that's when I saw it, a lifeless form sprawled out on the cold, concrete floor. Swallowing hard, I knelt down beside the body, my hands shaking as I gently rolled it over. It was one of the hotel's guests, a middle-aged woman whose face was frozen in a rictus of pure terror. Her eyes were wide open, her mouth agape, as if she had died mid-scream. Upon closer inspection, I noticed deep, angry gashes along her neck and torso, wounds that could only have been inflicted by some sort of razor-sharp implement. I felt the color drain from my face as the horrific realization hit me. This poor woman had been viciously murdered right here in my hotel. And now, the responsibility of dealing with the aftermath fell squarely on my shoulders. Hands shaking, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my cell phone, and dialed emergency services. As I waited for the police to arrive, I was consumed by a growing dread. What the hell was going on here? Was this just a random act of violence, or was there something more sinister at play? The cops arrived within minutes, swarming the hotel like angry hornets. They questioned me extensively, grilling me about the victim, the hotel's guests, and any potential suspects. I did my best to cooperate, but the truth was, I was just as much in the dark as they were. After what felt like an eternity, the forensics team finally removed the body, and the police began to clear out. A cold chill ran down my spine as I stood there, watching the flashing red and blue lights fade into the distance. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that whatever dark forces had taken hold of this place were far from finished with us. Over the next few days, the hotel was in complete disarray. News of the grisly murder had spread like wildfire, and our once thriving establishment was now the subject of intense media scrutiny and public speculation. Guests canceled their reservations left and right, leaving us with empty rooms and dwindling profits. The police, meanwhile, were no closer to finding the killer. They interviewed everyone, the hotel staff, the other guests, even me, but came up empty-handed. It was as if the murderer had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace of their identity or motives. Needless to say, I was a nervous wreck. I spent my days jumping at the slightest sound, constantly looking over my shoulder, terrified that the killer would strike again. And the eerie, unsettling energy that had permeated the hotel from the start only seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. During this time, I started to notice even more strange occurrences. Doors would slam shut on their own, lights would flicker, and the air would grow unnaturally cold, even on a warm summer day. On several occasions, I caught glimpses of those same shadowy figures darting through the corridors and vanishing before I could get a good look. I tried to dismiss it all as mere coincidence, but I knew the truth deep down. The hotel was haunted, and whatever spirits resided within were growing increasingly agitated and restless. It was as if they were feeding off the fear and uncertainty that had taken hold of the place, their malevolent energy swirling and building with each passing day. And then, one fateful night, the haunting took a genuinely terrifying turn. I was making my rounds, checking the hotel's security, and ensuring all the guests were safely tucked away in their rooms, when I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine as I entered a dimly lit hallway. The air grew thick and heavy, and the hairs on my neck stood on end. Instinctively, I whirled around, scanning the shadows for any movement. And that's when I saw it, a dark, amorphous shape hovering just a few feet away, its inky tendrils seeming to reach for me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, as the thing slowly began to take form. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were distorted and unnatural, its eyes black and soulless. And as it drifted closer, I could feel a powerful, malevolent energy radiating from it, like a suffocating aura of pure evil. I tried to call out to alert the other staff, but my voice caught in my throat. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything but stare in horrified fascination as the entity drew nearer and nearer. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, the thing let out a bone-chilling wail that sent shockwaves of terror through my entire being. It was a sound unlike anything I had ever heard, a primal, otherworldly scream that seemed to pierce through my soul. I stumbled backward, my legs threatening to give out as the entity continued its relentless advance. When I was sure it would pounce and tear me to shreds, it suddenly vanished, disappearing into the shadows as swiftly and silently as it had appeared. I stood there, trembling, my mind racing. What the hell had I just witnessed? Was that thing some kind of ghost? A demonic presence? I shuddered at the very thought, my stomach churning with a sickening blend of terror and revulsion. Somehow, I managed to compose myself and return to my office, where I immediately locked the door and sank into my chair, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I sat there, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And that's when it hit me. This place, this hotel, was not just haunted. It was the epicenter of some kind of supernatural evil. A malevolent force had taken up residence within these walls, feeding off the fears and anxieties of those who dared to cross its threshold. I knew then that I had to leave, abandon this cursed hotel, and leave its dark secrets behind. But as I contemplated my escape, a horrifying realization dawned on me. The entity seemed to have a personal vendetta against me. It had singled me out, drawn to me like a moth to a flame, and I had a sinking feeling that it wouldn't let me go without a fight. With growing dread, I knew I had to confront this evil head-on, uncover the truth about the hotel's haunted history, and end the malicious entity that lurked within. It was a terrifying prospect, but I couldn't just sit idly by and let this thing continue to terrorize innocent people. So, with a deep breath and steadying my nerves, I set out to investigate the hotel's dark secrets, determined to uncover the truth and end the haunting. My first stop was the hotel's archives, where I spent numerous hours carefully examining old documents and records, searching for clues about the building's past. What I uncovered was both fascinating and utterly horrifying. It turned out that the property had once been the site of a notorious asylum, a place where the mentally ill were subjected to all manner of cruel and inhumane treatments. The records detailed harrowing accounts of electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and other barbaric cures that were inflicted upon the patients, many of whom never made it out alive. As I delved deeper, I discovered that the asylum had a long and troubled history of unexplained deaths, violent incidents, and reports of supernatural activity. The entity I had encountered was merely the latest in a long line of malevolent spirits that had made this place their home. Armed with this knowledge, I had a clearer picture of what was happening. The hotel, built upon the foundations of the old asylum, had somehow become a gateway for these dark forces, a conduit through which they could manifest and wreak havoc on the living. The recent murders and ghostly sightings were just the tip of the iceberg, a harbinger of even greater horrors to come. Determined to end the haunting, I researched ways to banish the entity and cleanse the hotel of its dark energies. I pored over texts, consulted with paranormal experts, and even reached out to local spiritual leaders, all desperate to find a solution. One name kept coming up: Father O'Malley, a priest known for his expertise in exorcisms and dealing with supernatural occurrences. Desperate, I called him and explained the situation. He agreed to come, albeit with a note of caution in his voice. When Father O'Malley arrived, the air around the hotel seemed to grow even thicker with anticipation. He was a stout man, his presence commanding and calm. Without wasting time, he began his preparations, drawing protective symbols and setting up candles and holy relics around the hotel. As he began the exorcism, chanting in Latin, the air crackled with energy. Shadows seemed to writhe and contort, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the halls. The entity was not going to go quietly. Suddenly, the room was filled with a chilling gust of wind that blew out the candles. The demon materialized before us, its form even more terrifying and solid than before. It lunged at Father O'Malley, its clawed hand swiping through the air with deadly intent. The priest stood his ground, holding up his crucifix, which glowed with an otherworldly light. The demon screamed, a sound that tore through my soul, and lashed out again, knocking the crucifix from Father O'Malley's hand. The force of the blow sent the priest crashing into the wall, leaving him dazed and bleeding. In that moment, something primal awoke in me. I grabbed the fallen crucifix, feeling its warmth and power surge through me. I stood between the demon and the priest, holding the crucifix high, and began to chant the exorcism prayer Father O'Malley had been reciting. The demon recoiled, its form flickering and losing cohesion. It let out a final, ear-splitting shriek before dissolving into a cloud of black smoke, which dissipated into nothingness. The air around us grew still and quiet, the oppressive energy lifting as if a great weight had been removed. Father O'Malley, bruised and battered, got to his feet, a look of awe and gratitude in his eyes. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and wonder. "You banished the demon." As the sun began to rise, its rays casting a warm glow over the hotel, I knew that the nightmare was finally over. The Asylum Hotel had been cleansed, and the malevolent force that had plagued it was gone. The hotel's reputation would take time to rebuild, but with the supernatural threat neutralized, there was a sense of hope and renewal in the air. The Asylum Hotel, once a place of darkness and despair, was now a symbol of resilience and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most daunting of obstacles. As the sun began to rise, its rays casting a warm glow over the hotel, I knew that the nightmare was finally over. The Asylum Hotel had been cleansed, and the malevolent force that had plagued it was gone. The hotel's reputation would take time to rebuild, but with the supernatural threat neutralized, there was a sense of hope and renewal in the air. The Asylum Hotel, once a place of darkness and despair, was now a symbol of resilience and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most daunting of obstacles. So if you ever find yourself in this neck of the woods, visit us. The Asylum Hotel may have a haunted past, but now it's a place of comfort and hospitality. Just don't be surprised if you catch a glimpse of our resident house guests. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more eerie tales and supernatural experiences. Your support helps bring these stories to life and keeps the adventure going. And if you want to hear about the time I was called to paint an old bridge with its own dark secrets, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and stay brave.